Please share thoughts on those who suffer from intense pain, as well as those who seek to serve those in pain. There we go. I am Latuii. I am with this instrument. Greetings, my friends. We come today as your brothers and sisters who have at times marveled at the Creator's beauty, and at other times have found the humor that rounds out the Creator's love. And we greet you in that sacred balance, that tension that denotes the contours of the Creator's face in each of our lives, how we transmit what love and beauty we can find into each other's lives. It is our first time with this instrument in a speaking capacity, and he is advised to keep steady and to continue reaching out in a challenge should he have any doubts as to our purposes this afternoon. However, we are confident that he has made the call, as have all of you in your hearts. And as our brother and sisters of Hatan have related recently, we come when there is a calling. We come when we feel that the face of the Creator may be brushed up against in just such a way that the color of this visage can be appreciated in just the right manner, that a kind of resolution may occur, and the facets of the Creator that tend to hide in obscurity, but that can offer a new angle of viewing, might be drawn out. We are so pleased to be with you, for you are making such strides as a circle. And it is not possible, you see, for us to be able to contact you without this progress. There are other circles where we are an easier match, so to speak. And this is no shade, shall we say, on your project here. We correct this instrument. There is room for many different circles with many different emphases. For you seek to live lives of meaning and service. as do we. And to come when we are not called, when we do not have anything to offer, is to dazzle and entertain rather than commune. And we are all of us too busy for that, are we not? Please, in this case, apply an extra dose of discernment to the ingestion of the words we offer. They are words, my friends. And they come from a place, a quality of balance that you may partake of if you are careful and ruthless in a way with your own humility. Certain portions of our message may not land where we would have them. For we, in our state as a social memory complex, distant from your planet, despite all of our abilities to see into each other's hearts, still, my friends, cannot know for certain what will serve and what will detract from a life lived in love. Since this is our ultimate shared goal between you of the circle and we of the circle of Latuii, we must keep our purposes in mind and interpret these clumsy words through this veil of separation. Thank you for discarding any of our thoughts that you find inappropriate or disturbing. For though we want to conceive of ourselves as a light-hearted and merry fifth density complex, always seeking to be playful in ascertaining that upward spiraling light we seek together. Nevertheless, our lessons have been situated in the light of wisdom. And there is no shame in blocking light that blinds instead of illuminates. This is your task to accomplish, to find the way to relate to our words, even if that is a stepping away from the buffet and a departure in heart from the love we offer you. Before we begin our main monologue, let us take a moment as a circle, you of Earth and we of Latuii, to steady, to center, and to appreciate our communion together. I am Latuii. Again, my friends, we are those of Latuii, and we continue. The subject for our dialogue with you today centers around pain. We note that the humor we are famous for has its roots in a squarely facing approach to pain. The reason for humor is to find in that which is difficult, that which is easily turned away from, the kernel of love that you express with the word absurdity. This experience of a creator in separation from itself, learning by rote and by the catalysis of balanced experience to grow towards an appreciation of its true nature. It is absurd. It was never possible, we believe, for the Creator to explore itself without an embrace of the energy of absurdity. Because this is a loving and positive way to feel into falsity that is marbled throughout your experience in the illusion. And therefore, the pains that you have had in your life give you the entryway into the leavening, lightening force that humor is but one aspect of. And this is your healthy and balanced tool for relating to transformation in all of its discomforts, all of its tragedies. We would not downplay the pain of life. We would simply remark upon the moment of tension that allows one to recognize that the reality of pain does not obviate the reality of joy and love and comfort. You see, much of what causes the imbalance towards pain beyond bearing is a inability to recall the nature of one's experience on a spectrum of affect. To feel pain is to make pleasure not only more brilliant, but possible. And so, our first observation of intense pain and the relating to the other self in this pain is one of recognizing the incompleteness of the experience. however overwhelming pain and suffering may be in your life, friends, it is only recognizable in contrast to that which you must acknowledge as possible. And indeed, this is largely in your third density experience, especially that on this planet, which frustrates so. This instrument remarked earlier on the exacerbation of pain due to a judgment by the self that it is wrong to feel it, and that when one is trapped in pain, truly one is trapped in a resistance to pain. Now, you will not hear those of Latuii encourage the acceptance of pain. It is possible, but it is a very blunt force way to relate to it. On some level, pain must be accepted when it is a friend in one's life, because any rejection of life, of the subdivisions of the flow of life, is a rejection of life itself in a way, and a retreat to the more unconscious and less sentient forms of creatorship that obtained in earlier densities from third. This is part of your heritage as mind, body, spirit complexes. And if you can appreciate this heritage, what it has conveyed to you as habits and strategies for the maintenance of a self-aware complex, then perhaps you can understand why an embrace of pain, qua pain, is not quite balanced. Those of the complex of Ra offered a way to relate to emotions that has some applicability to the instances of pain that you experience in incarnative life. One of an express and purposeful balancing, where a given emotion is seen instead of as a totalizing experience, as a point on the line, a pole on the spectrum of possible experiences that have their root in the archetypal architecture of your experience. Pain is part of this architecture, for there must be some impetus to push and not simply to pull, to impel as a corollary to the drawing of evolution and progression. The problem, so to speak, enters in a very special condition. one where we correct this instrument, where there is a feeling of imprisonment in a given feeling, be it bodily, be it emotional, be it something much more subtle and hard to place the finger upon, such as pain arising from the spiritual complex portion of your beingness. We offer our condolences to those who feel disempowered and abandoned by their Creator as a result of this painful stasis, this inability to find solid ground off of which to push, for it hurts too much, or the hurt is so embedded in the memory of the self that one is rather arrested by this fear of feeling it again. Many who suffer from chronic bodily pain develop an antipathy towards leaving the painful condition in spite of their status as a co-creator, not simply of their experience, but of the universe. Because it could always get worse, could it not? And one develops an antipathy and fear towards the way pain has seared itself into the consciousness. Even the most bodily pain, my brothers and sisters, has a mental component, an emotional component, and a spiritual component. And it is most tragic in the spirit because it is a closing off of the mystery that spirit transfers from intelligent infinity to the self. It is the dark night of the soul to be so trapped by fear, so incurious about the world outside of this prison of fear. The opposite of this case is that of the intrepid seeker who knows of the dangers on the path ahead, who is aware that pain will be on the menu, if not for this meal, then for some future meal. We caution you, therefore, to reflect deeply upon pains in your life and how we correct this instrument and which behaviors they have prompted you to adopt. This is also important to face when it is a loved one who is in pain. For it can be challenging in the extreme not to take that pain upon oneself. We, in fact, would not suggest that one avoid this totally. What scares the mind-body-spirit complex in pain from risking further pain is experienced in the mind-body-spirit complex observing the one in pain. The discontent is felt on all sides because there is a recognition of an imbalance involved, but a lack of avenues towards balance that seem workable. The one in pain, afraid to risk further pain. The friend of the one in pain, afraid to acknowledge the same possibility in their own experience. What is to be done in such a situation? We of Latuii are confused sometimes by the manner in which habitual thoughts and behaviors coalesce around these situations. For to us, thoughts are things very expressly. And just as you might rearrange your room to imbue it with more tidiness, we arrange our thoughts to allow the energetic flow that typifies and certifies our balanced functioning. We simply excel at this compared to you for only one reason that speaks not to our superior capacities, but simply to our presence in an illusion in which we see the operation of our unconscious as a corollary to what we experience consciously. You, however, experience the unconscious less directly and as a buffeting breeze. A wind cannot be reasoned with. A gale force wind must be yielded to if one seeks to maintain one's coherence. This is quite interesting to us because it speaks to the advantage of your illusion that you must face these things and that the arresting nature of pain only delays the healing. From our vantage point, this delay is entirely immaterial, for we operate at a different time scale, you see. You, on the other hand, not being privy to the elements of your total self that act as ballast to the ship of consciousness must scramble about and think of some stratagem through which you may heal and recover mobility as the upward spiraling light draws you on. And you ask us, we hear, for input on these stratagems. We are loath to offer advice, and instead would prefer to give you a better feel for the lay of the land, so to speak, so that you may pilot the ship in the unique way you are going to do, regardless of our words. We do not flatter ourselves so much as to consider your modes of inquiry inferior to ours. Indeed, while you stumble about a bit, to be sure, each uncertain step has a consequentiality to it that we can only dream about. You have the opportunity to make so much progress compared to what is possible in our illusion, which is why the higher densities are so prevalent in the ranks of the wanderers. Those who dip back into the dense illusion of third density to work out a tiny, rough edge of their sculpture of spirit. Therefore, we would say that there is little advice to offer the one in truly abject pain. There is indeed the sense that there has been too much of a bad thing, which has the same effect as its inverse. This is not the fault necessarily of the seeker, but instead speaks to the unique logoic architecture in this sector. And as such, the first takeaway in this study of pain is to honor it and to perhaps not celebrate it, but to grant its power and presence in the life, whether you are its observer or its recipient. This will not provide a palliative immediately, but it will give the pain meaning. For if one can see that it wraps up within its harsh, spiky, groaning nature its own cure, then one may consider, after long struggle, how patience may work with it. The pain, especially bodily pain, can be endured in almost every case. This is part of the problem. If it were unendurable, it would impel the seeker to seek all the more fervently. And this indeed is part of its purpose that has been perverted and lost in the confusion of third density. So one can simply be with the pain to great profit. And let it work instead of struggling against it. This would require, in him who has suffered long, a deep and overwhelming courage, because often, once pain and the catalyst it represents has grown to this level, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And this is the accurate fear held by the one in pain. However, we would caution one against simply abandoning the friend to his or her pain. For this is not the role of the friend relative to the one so pained. It is their duty and honor, we correct this instrument, role to choose how to relate to the pain at all times. And they must make the decision on a change of relating to it. They must make the decision that escape has exhausted its utility. They must reach out for a thought form that can contextualize walking through the darkness to the light. For it must have some meaningfulness and reality in their minds to occur. And furthermore, the physical pain is a corollary of that which occurs more subtly in the emotions and mentations of the one so afflicted. We offer care in this regard, and we would point to this care as a form of healing but we provide it much less effectively than you in incarnation. When your friend is in pain, and you find it unacceptable to witness this, you have an alternative of sorts. You may open your heart to the pain and feel along with your friend. You have this within your co-creatorship to share any kind of pain. If you are soft and porous enough and courageous enough to do so, to let it pierce you, and thereby to offer camaraderie and solidarity to your friend. This does work with the resistance to pain, for the loneliness that pain creates in the sufferer, the inability to relate it to others in such a way that others will continue to offer friendship, is deep, is absolutely isolating. So we encourage you to work against isolation. This, as a matter of fact, is one of the manners in which social memory shall obtain on this planet, we believe. For these pains continue to be continue to be generated through the imbalances in the greater social yellow ray complex you all partake of. When you learn to take on, in some small way, the pain of others, you are redistributing it. You are acknowledging its purpose and goodness in a way, and allowing for the one in more pain to feel into a meaning in it that is not solely about its own distorted concept of self. You are reflecting a new possibility that can inspire one to go through the pain to the light. We are not saying that you can heal them this way, because, as you well know, only the self can heal the self. But the self can heal the self on behalf of another self in part. By this we mean what the pain reflects in the friend can be embraced as an example, as a thought form of possible alternative relating. We offer no guidance on how to get there, for every relationship is different, and it must be honestly encountered to be of any value. Look to the one known as Jesus in your sacred texts. Every healing was accompanied by a frank and personally vulnerable feeling. The one known as Jesus put himself on the line. And it is this willingness to hurt that gives the courage to the other to go through their hurt. Now, in closing on this topic, we would provide some remarks on the palliatives that your world offers. The harsh chemical compounds that fight distortion with distortion, shall we say. There is a place for them. But it is not well understood in your culture. This has to do with matters that go far beyond bodily health and into the roots of the catalysts that are experienced as ill health and pain in the body. The closing off and numbing of the senses rather than the careful attending to them such that information can be transmitted. You see, there is a sacred element to pain that simply builds up to a toxic level because of your society's emphasis on one side of the pole. Always being happy and looking without for the reasons why one cannot be content. This is a very crude encapsulation of a complex phenomenon with many facets. So please do not take this as authoritative in a summary way, but instead as one offering of analysis. For we of Latuii can only offer what we have and what we think will be useful. And anything in excess of this would not fit into words. The corollary, we correct this instrument. The reciprocal phenomenon of this imbalance towards a feeling that happiness should obtain at all times, and that the inability of this affect to constantly be present is some kind of problem, is the desire to escape, to blot out the experiences, with the senses being only the lowest level of this greater philosophical and psychic imbalance. And those brothers and sisters of Monka spoke on this a bit at your last channeling gathering. They wished you to keep a firm grasp on the full spectrum of feeling that tuning to the planet can confer. This is good advice, even if it feels very unapproachable right now. Because to strive towards this will provide the context for imagining a way of dealing with your planet's issues other than escape, other than fighting and attacking. There is another mode available. The ability to shift the modality of thought and vibration such that one becomes the balance in a given situation. This is the crude purpose with which your kind invoke the drug, to change the self, to address the detuned condition. We offer simply that you need not look without for the mechanism here, that you can look within to find these different aspects of self that you can bring to bear once you are listening to the key the song is played in, to use their metaphor. We do not suggest that you never use a substance, for you are drenched in them, and that would be also a kind of escape, would it not? You must learn how to be a self in many different modes, many different situations, while keeping the thread of what is at the root of you fresh and vibrant in your mind and in your heart. This is the manner towards which we would direct your circle. For this begins to work with the spirit complex to bring in these completely out of band possibilities that train the imagination, that train it, my brothers and sisters, to achieve new heights of co-creatorship. And this will be the most effective way in which the pain that some feel intensely can be shared so that no one feels it overwhelmingly. You must be very deft and listen closely for the service that is requested underneath the words used. And this will take you on a journey that you will recognize as that of the adept. For it is a tall order in your society. We encourage you. We do not advise you, but we encourage you to consider it and to consider how uniquely you may walk this path, looking to nobody as a requirement, not waiting on others to give you permission. It is, in a way, a revolutionary act on behalf of your fellow other selves. And it is so revolutionary that it is entirely peaceful, for you find within yourself that quality of power that emerges when one truly embraces love and light. And in this respect, you have a complete message that we of Latuii may offer you. We are so pleased to have had this opportunity to commune with your circle. May we answer any follow-up questions from you today, my brothers and sisters.
I have a question. Is there a way that we can productively work with thought forms in regards to pain and addiction, whether they be more self-destructive thought forms tied to like longing for comfort, or maybe empowering thought forms? Just if you could shed any light on that.
We are those of Latuii. We believe we get the gist of your question, and it is a doozy, shall we say. The first skill we would hint at, and we caution you, my brother, we cannot explicate in full through this instrument, or any instrument. For the true understanding involved here must come from within. The first step is to be able to recognize and prune thoughts that you find lacking in usefulness. When you find yourself inundated by despair and pain and the trapped feeling, you are experiencing something that is, for you, real. What you may not appreciate is the way that you contributed to that feeling through your thinking. Our brothers and sisters of Hatang have often spoken of the careful curation of the mind. This seems to many to entail a kind of rigid control. But this is not what we mean. You may think any thought you wish. The problem only lies in the lack of complete engagement with the full consequences of the thought. For thoughts that do not serve you will be followed through to their inherent ends if you give them the opportunity. This is the correct use of the mind to actually test these forms, the way that they feel, the child thoughts they spawn, and the thoughts that they crowd out. The only tool we would suggest, short of group work, would be the full exploration of each and every thought. For once you have made this discovery, you will naturally avoid and cease giving energy to that which does not serve you. It is the lack of effort that is concomitant with the poor attention span, shall we say, of your peoples, that is at issue here. Once you are able to let unhelpful thoughts run themselves out, so to speak, by not feeding them, you will be in a position to feed those thoughts that are helpful. For they will be able to disclose their full nature to you. They will be able to read the entire story of themselves to you. And you can start to collect those helpful thoughts into structures of thought that then provide the scaffolding for this new version of the self that pain, suffering, and woe are designed to impel you towards. Have we made an answer to your question, my brother?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
We thank you. We are those of Latuii. May we answer any other questions or respond to a comment you may have.
Latuii, I find myself musing about how to choose objects of meditation to allow for playfulness, even with heavy matters. Is there anything along these lines you would like to comment on?
We are those of Latuii, and you have called the right number, my brother, for we are constantly in celebration of the lightning, humorous manner of relating to this absurd creation, this beautiful creation, and this sad creation. For they all form the actual experience of self-awareness. It is incumbent upon you as a offerer of thought forms in this mode to recognize the nature of the offering. You cannot ever be certain that the service call you hear is being answered by the service you have within yourself to offer. This is always a kind of gamble, and it must be prosecuted with a heavy dose of humility. Keep your lightness by touching each form in your mind with a feather, so to speak. These offerings are not in an end blah. We continue and correct ourselves. These offerings are not themselves the service. The intention, my brother, is the service. And it flows from your heart first, and then achieves shape and coherence through your godly mind. Learn to feel what you wish to offer first, and then let it show you its projection into the illusion. Follow this as you would follow a old trail, hundreds of years old, covered with leaves and growth, but still whispering its nature to you. And then, as you follow it, feel it. And let this intercourse, this interchange between feeling and thought, this feedback loop, we might say, guide you when you have made the offering. There is another feedback loop to cast your attention towards, the feedback of the other self. You must learn to honestly offer and honestly accept the success or failure of the offering. We assure you, my brother, whatever you offer in love is not a mistake. And what another may reject is not a ruling on its fitness, but only the same free will that you have embraced, located in the other self. It is a risk, but all that is valuable arises therefrom. May we elaborate in some way, my brother?
I feel content with what you've said. Thank you.
Then, if you are content, my brother, we of Latuii are content. And we would ask this instrument to make a closing at this moment and to convey our deep appreciation to your circle for this initial friendly confluence. We have enjoyed it, my brother and sisters, and bid you a fond farewell. I am Latuii. Adonai Vazu. Adonai Vazu Barakas.